I used to believe I could read Jason like a book. Every habit, every pause, every soft "you okay?" he tossed over his shoulder while searing chicken or tightening a wobbly cabinet knob. For 5 years, steadiness was his superpower. He paid our rent early, labeled leftovers with dates, cleaned the coffee grinder on Sundays because bitter sticks. I told my friends he was the kind of man you marry when you're done with chaos, and yet I kept a little chaos anyway, like a lighter at the bottom of a purse I didn't tell him about. When he started acting secretive. Quiet phone calls in the bedroom, a new passcode, a calendar event blocked off with nothing but a gray square. I decided he must be hiding something. The stupid part is that something could have been a surprise for our anniversary, but I'd become the kind of woman who assumes the worst so she can feel righteous about the mess she's already making. The mess had a name: Drew. I met him at a friend's launch party. The kind of crowded bar where the music is 2 decibels louder than confession. He was reckless in the glossy way that makes you feel like a story is happening to you instead of you doing the work of living it. I told myself I was just enjoying attention, just flexing a muscle I hadn't used since Jason, and I settled into a routine of farmers markets and early bedtime. Then I started checking my reflection in storefronts on the nights I told Jason I was staying late. I wasn't in love with Drew. I was in love with being the version of myself who could still break rules and get away with it. The night I found Jason's secret, I was looking for one that would justify mine. He was in the shower, and his suit jacket, he only wears one for meetings with the board, was draped over the chair in our room, the pocket slightly bulged. Inside was a thin envelope with our building's address on it, the kind landlords use when they want your attention. I slid out the letter and scanned for rent increases. Instead, it was a notice confirming the end of our lease effective next month, signed by both tenants. Except the signature looked like mine and wasn't. There was a second page, a form I'd never seen, transferring the utilities into my name for the next 30 days as a courtesy. My stomach went arctic. I heard the water shut off, shoved everything back the way I'd found it, and sat on the edge of the bed like a child trying to pose as furniture. Jason came out in a towel, smile soft, and said we should try that new Thai place Friday because the owner gives free mango sticky rice if you ask about his garden. I stared at his face and thought, he's leaving me. And then pettily, defensively, I thought, good. Now I have a reason. The next 2 weeks were a pantomime of normal. He kissed my temple in the mornings, sent me screenshots of funny typos, asked if I wanted him to pick up more coffee beans. I took my phone to the bathroom like a teenager, and told myself it was because he'd taken his to the bedroom first. When I told him I had a girls' night, he said, "Have fun, text when you get there," and the patient way he meant it made me meaner. I told Drew I might be single soon. He said finally, like we had a plan. Then Jason slid an invitation across our kitchen counter one night in an envelope the color of butter. "No peeking," he said, "but block Saturday. Dress nice." I joked that dress nice is a threat when your boyfriend thinks khaki is formal, but he only laughed and said it would be special. The invitation was heavy in my palm. I didn't open it until he left for work because I am bravest when no one is watching. A hotel name. A ballroom. 5 years of us. Guests' names I recognized. My sister, his best friend from college, our neighbors who always bring a dessert that could double as architecture. I knew it then, or thought I did. He was going to propose. The lease transfer became a kindness in my mind. He'd move out so I wouldn't have to while we renovated or while we decided where to live next after a ring. I let that idea warm me like a stolen sweater, and went to celebrate, with Drew in a hotel 2 train stops away from the hotel where my boyfriend had booked a ballroom to toast our love. On the day of the party, I wore a dress that makes me look like I walk faster than I do. Satin that catches light, a green that makes strangers think expensive. Jason's suit actually fit. He'd had it tailored and I only noticed because he looked like a man who'd finally claimed his shoulders. In the elevator to the ballroom he was quiet, the kind that feels like a held breath, and I filled it with nonsense about the florist's Instagram, and whether my sister would cry. He pressed a hand to the small of my back when the doors opened, and the room rose to meet us. Candles like a held constellation, a string quartet, a long table with place cards in his meticulous print. There was a photo station against a wall, a grid of frames labeled Year 1 through Year 5. I felt a rush of fondness and fear. Imagine loving someone enough to catalog it for a crowd. Our friends hugged me and said I looked stunning. His parents kissed my cheek. My sister whispered, "Is tonight the night?" And I let my eyes say maybe. Jason tapped a glass, cleared his throat, and everyone quieted with that nice hum that happens when people are happy to stop shouting. He thanked us for coming, told a sweet story about our first apartment where the oven ran hot so every recipe was a mystery, then did a thing Jason never does. He paused and stared at his hands like he was choosing between words that both cost something. "We planned tonight as an anniversary party," he said. "We wanted to celebrate 5 years of learning how to be kind on purpose." He looked up, met faces, not mine, and smiled in that gentle way he has when delivering news that requires calm. "It turns out," he continued, "tonight is also a goodbye. There is silence and then there is the kind made of wool, thick and scratchy against the skin of your panic." I felt all the air leave my chest and looked at my sister because I needed an anchor, but she was already looking at me like she was doing math. Jason did not perform a monologue. He did not point at me or name names. He said, in a voice that would sound the same ordering lunch or offering a seat, that he believed trust is a practice, and when practice is neglected, games start. He said he had been neglectful in some ways. Too comfortable, too certain of autopilot. And he was sorry for his part in letting our love become furniture. He said other kinds of neglect had also arrived, sharper kinds, choices that make you into someone else's story even when you promised to write your own together. He said this without flinching, which is worse than shouting because calm makes a room listen. My head buzzed with every text I'd sent that started, "I'm on my way," when I was not, with the hotel receipts I thought I'd tucked into the sleeve of a book, with the spinach leaf I'd brushed off my lip in a mirrored hallway I shouldn't have been in. Jason raised his glass. "So tonight," he said, "we're going to eat and laugh and tell the truth we can tell in public, which is that we were lucky for a long time and now we're going to be brave separately." I wanted to stand, to say it isn't what you think, to make an argument about how if he's leaving me anyway I cannot be the villain alone, but then servers move through the room and place white envelopes at every setting like a snow of consequences. Mine was heavier than the others. I slid a finger under the flap and found a letter that began with my name, and did not use my pet name because pet names are an intimacy you lose when you squander others. He wrote that the lease transfer was signed, the next month was paid, the utilities were in my name, the dog. His dog first, then ours. Would be with him because he wanted the creature he loved to live where the air felt steady. He wrote that he had closed our joint savings and sent half to my account, calculated from the last deposit, because fairness is not cancelled by hurt. He wrote that there was a second envelope for me only, sealed, inside the larger one, and that I should open it privately when I wanted to stop lying to myself. The smaller envelope was a confession cage. I didn't open it. Not there, not while the quartet started a song that sounded like rain, and people lifted glasses around a story they did not know they were in. Jason took plates from servers and handed them to people before himself, because of course he did. He leaned and said something to my mother that made her nod. He did not touch me. Every few minutes I felt eyes on me and then away. Kindness like a coat offered by a stranger, who doesn't want to embarrass you by seeing you shiver. My sister squeezed my knee under the table and whispered, "Do you want to leave?" And I said, "If I stand I'll fall." When dessert came, lemon tart like a soft sun. Jason tapped his glass again. "Before we end," he said, "I want to thank the people in this room who taught me how to show up and keep showing up." He thanked his parents, my parents, his friend who once drove him across town at midnight when our sink exploded, my neighbor who fed our dog when we were both stuck late. He thanked me last. He said, "Thank you for every morning we made easy for each other. I hope we keep those and release the rest." He didn't bow. He didn't break. He sat and folded his napkin like dignity is muscle memory. It should have been a relief that he spared me the spectacle, but shame is greedy. It imagines everywhere the light could have hit and floods it anyway. People clap the way people clap at the end of a eulogy, because the alternative is sobbing. We hugged those who would accept it. We smiled into cheeks. I left the room upright. In the elevator I opened the small envelope because punishment only feels righteous if you deliver it to yourself. Inside were 3 things. A printed screenshot of messages with Drew that were not explicit but were undeniable. A photo of us entering a boutique hotel that prides itself on discretion. And a receipt from that hotel with my card number redacted and the line room service. 2 glasses. On the back of the photo Jason had written, "I hired a professional after I became a different person in my own house. Someone who checks locks twice and counts your breaths while you sleep. I don't want to be that man. Please don't contact me to argue about context. There's always context. There's not always trust." When the doors opened on the lobby, I put the envelope back inside itself like a nesting doll of proofs, and walked into air that felt like someone else's lungs. I did what people do when consequences finally arrive. I tried to bargain with time. I texted a speech about how we were both to blame, how I only drifted because he had become distant, how what I did wasn't love but it also wasn't a life sentence. My messages went green. I sent a long email to an inbox that replied with an autoresponder. "This address is no longer monitored." I called Drew because my self-respect was already busy elsewhere. He didn't answer. Later, I found out Jason had sent the boutique hotel photo to Drew's fiancée with a note that said, "You deserve to know." And the word fiancé landed like a dropped plate. Over the next weeks, silence became a roommate. The dog hair I used to curse became a relic I refused to vacuum. I trained myself not to expect the sound of keys in the lock. When the lease month ended, I moved to a smaller apartment with thin walls and a view of a brick I could reach if I leaned. I thought about selling the green dress, and then decided to keep it as a museum exhibit of the person I don't get to be anymore. People say revenge is petty. Maybe it is if you do it to feel big. Jason's wasn't revenge. It was a boundary set in a room full of witnesses, so that I wouldn't spend the next decade telling myself the story differently. He controlled the ending because I had refused to control my choices. He apologized for his part. In public, gently. And told the truth about mine in a way that let other people keep their dinner down. Months later, a friend sent me a photo of Jason at a park in another city. The dog's leash looped in his hand, a woman leaning into his side with the easy weight of someone who arrived without an agenda. He looked lighter, not because he'd lost me, but because he'd put down the work of carrying both of us. I didn't cry when I saw it. I felt the kind of quiet that hurts more than sobbing because it isn't performative. It's just the absence of a life. I used to think my worst moment was getting caught. It was actually earlier, when I decided being wanted by 2 people made me more than being honest with one. If you're waiting for my redemption arc, I don't have one to offer you yet. I go to work, I water plants, I return shopping carts. When I walk past hotels with mirrored hallways, I look straight ahead. When I put leftovers in the fridge, I write the date on blue tape because bitter sticks and so do habits. Sometimes I take the long way home and pass the ballroom, and I imagine the grid of frames still on the wall. Year 1 through year 5, and how the space for year 6 is just a rectangle of lighter paint. I used to think I could read Jason like a book. It turns out he was the one writing, quietly, carefully, choosing a last chapter that left me exactly where I belonged. In the audience, learning how to sit with the ending I earned.